All right. Felicia, welcome. And everyone else, welcome as well to this next in our series of See Me Stories of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. It's terrific to have you with us today. We really appreciate you joining us. Some of you have attended previously, and I know some of you may be here for the first time. So rather than take a lot of time away from Felicia, I will just say, my name is Mary Medley. I'm with the Society. Stacy Svensson is here as well with the Society, and we are the folks behind the scenes. It is all about you all and Felicia, who is going to share her story today. We're delighted to have you, and we hope you enjoy it. Felicia, I am going to give you the opportunity to say what you'd like to say about your background so that you can incorporate it into your story. Take it away.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen now. Is that okay?
Absolutely.
Okay. Thanks. Please let me know when you can see it.
You can see
If
it.
you can see it. Okay.
Yes,
Great.
ma'am.
Thanks. Thank you, everyone, for taking the time out of your day to join the call. And I do want to start by thanking the Society and Mary and Deloitte for putting on this series. When I was asked to speak, I was honestly a bit apprehensive because the topic can be kind of uncomfortable and redundant. So my intention for this presentation is just to kind of give you a little background of who I am, how did I get here, and really what is my why when it comes to the accounting profession, being a CPA of color, and then just overall the things that I think we can all take away from today. So I hope you enjoy. Okay, so the title, Why a Colored Lens? And so I chose this title not only because obviously I'm speaking today on my experience as a Black woman in the profession, but because I try to look at things from like multiple angles. So our lens is the way we view things. It kind of shapes our perspective, but it can also create what are called like unconscious biases. And these are like judgments that people hold outside of their awareness that can affect how they treat others in the workplace, sorry, and others and elsewhere. So I hope the conversations like this will continue to happen because I think it not only moves, will have be a tool to move the profession forward, but then also just start the communication, right? So really, as you understand someone's perspective, you can start to change the lens in which you view things. So also while I was doing this presentation, I came across a couple things that I think are again worth note since I am giving this perspective. This presentation as a woman of color, that 2021 marks the 100-year anniversary of the first Black CPA in the United States. So John John Cromwell, he was a man of many talents and interests, and he earned a distinction of being a CPA in 1921. And I spent a little time trying to look at statistics from um, 1970 through our current state. But when I came across the next bullet, which is just 2 years ago, an AICPA survey found that only 2% of CPAs are African American, and then only 1% um, are at CPA firms are African American. There's really kind of shows that there's really no need to talk about then and now, because where we are right now is still gives us a lot of opportunity to kind of grow and increase the number of African American CPAs. So, okay, let's get into it. So, I am a bona fide South Jersey girl, and I've always tended to go against the grain. I've been, I would say, pretty ambitious since I was young, but I will say I never really had a strong support system or, to help me navigate it. So, I pretty much just kind of had to learn things on my own. So I was introduced to accounting in high school through an elective, and I immediately liked it because, A, it made sense. B, I was in a situation where there was not a lot of economic abundance. So, I was working all through high school just so that I had money for, essentials. So, in high school, I was, in quote unquote college prep, but there wasn't really a lot of interest from, let's just say, the, overall school officials to kind of help guide me to achieve, to attend a 4-year university. I was really more directed to kind of go to the vocational path, which, I mean, it's not a bad idea, but it just really wasn't for me. And I think that's mainly because, my mom was very smart. She was a nurse, and she kind of always held education in a high regard for us. So after high school, I knew I couldn't stay in New Jersey. So my mom was in Virginia with my brother and sister at the time. And so I accepted an offer from her to move to Virginia to pursue college. So what I ended up doing was, of course, I worked full time all my entire collegiate career, but I attended Northern Virginia to Community College and started off my collegiate academic career there. Um, and that was a great experience because the professors were really good, and it really I was able to sort of ease into college because I really wasn't really sure what that looked like exactly. So 2 years after that, um, by chance, that's as part of this going back and kind of reviewing my life, I had to kind of sort of piece together. I had applied to the George Washington University in Washington, D.C., and was accepted. And so I really had never heard of that university. I thought it was Georgetown. That was only George school I had ever heard of. But my mom convinced me that it was a really, pretty a good college, and that if I got accepted, that I should go. And so off I went to GW. And I probably had a very different experience than most students there because I was a commuter student. I worked full time at a car dealership in the evenings, and I, took the metro from Alexandria to DC every day to attend classes. So I did not really have the typical college experience of living on campus or even participating in campus activities. Most of my campus experience came from my work study job, yes, in addition to my other job in the international services student services office, which was really did expose me to people of a very diverse backgrounds that are coming to study in the United States, and kind of sort of some of the challenges that they had to go through as well. So it was a really good experience for me to have, and again, help shape my views and really overcoming adversity, because obviously I experienced adversity, but when you're coming from another country, it just adds a different dimension and perspective. So that I think that was a great ad for me. At GW, I had the opportunity to study the business of sports. So sorry, I should give context. We're talking probably 1994 to 1997 is when I attended GW. And so at that time, sports were coming more into the academic arena as an actual field of study. And I love to consume sports, and I love to consume business. And so I just dove right in, and I was able to create an individualized plan. So my bachelor's of business administration was focused on sports management. Um, However, I ran into just the adversity of not being able to work for free, which is very common. Well, I'm not sure now, but was very common back then because it was new and exciting industry, and everybody wanted to be a part of it. And so I wasn't able to get as many internships, or I didn't feel Like I was able to accept, take an internship that didn't pay because obviously I worked to pay for whatever portion of the university costs that I had. And so what I did is I had to go additional routes. So I continued to kind of really focus on it, but I landed an internship at Blue Cross and Blue Shield in my junior year at GW as an AP clerk, which really allowed me to translate some of the information that I was learning in class into work experience. So I did that for a year and a half, and then was offered a full-time position as I was graduating college. That was it was a great experience for me. But shortly after I got that job, I kind of found out about a position in at Choice Hotels, which is a hotel chain in that was based out of Maryland, and they had a management training program. And I applied for that program, and what I liked about it at that time was it was management. So I kind of was like, okay, this could be an opportunity for me to make it in the world. And then also it was a 6-month rotation in 4 areas of the finance and accounting department. So I was able to really get a glimpse of the tax department, FP&A, strategy, and then just overall general ledger. So it was a great experience for me to be able to just kind of see different aspects of what the accounting world looked like. During that time, I ended up having 2 kids during my transition. So I had finally made it, and then took on the new responsibility of being a mom, which sort of made things a little bit more interesting. And so with that, I moved. We headed out from Washington D.C., and I kind of moved on to Houston, Texas. And it's in Houston, Texas, where I believe I really earned my chops as an accountant. I was able to land a position at a electronic payments company, which is I think some of you in the Denver area may know of it. It's really First Data, now Pfizer, but I worked in their electronic check conversion department, and it was there where so from a just for a little bit perspective, just to kind of give you guys that industry is it's a very detailed oriented business. So it's really small dollar transactions at times, but a high volume. And so it's there that where you kind of I really learned where the discipline of the detail that is required in our profession, but then also understanding the processes, right? And so understanding how things kind of fit together to make the big puzzle of what we do, well, we do as CPAs and overall accountants. So I was working there as a staff accounting, and then during that time I did also earn an MBA with 2 kids under 2. Yes, but during that time in 2004 timeframe, we had basically I had the unfortunate opportunity to kind of be involved in a restatement. And so, if anybody remembers the early 2000s, that was, especially in Houston, and that was the time of Enron, that was the time of Arthur Anderson. So there were a lot of smart people in the room, right? And so, working in telecheck, I was able to really had a supervisor who really taught me discipline, really taught me to be diligent, be focused, understand, what you're doing, even though it kind of can be a little bit repetitive. And so, as a part of that restatement is when I really probably had the first person to really, I would say, take an interest or at least encourage me to um, progress or progress a little bit more in the field from just being an accountant to pursuing my CPA. And so at this time, I'm probably in my late 20s before I really understood that there were the different levels to attain within the industry. And that's partially because for me, I didn't have a lot of opportunities to see. I didn't see a lot of people like me or around me that were at that level. And then also, and part it may be because I was in industry, because I really didn't have that much I didn't have any public experience. I didn't know how to navigate navigate the various avenues within the accounting world. But I do want to give a special let's say shout out or a special thank you to Paula Redmond, who's also a Denver a native, who really talked, worked with me, and she was so super smart. And it's the very first time where I used to take out T accounts when I couldn't figure things out. And I think, that was a huge no during the Enron time, because, you're supposed to be able to do it, quick in your head. And that just wasn't me. But I knew the T accounts and the debits and credits is just kind of like where I live. And I just will never forget the day that we had all of our windows filled with debits and credits on how transactions were supposed to flow. And for me, that was the day that everything sort of illuminated and sort of all the pieces sort of fell together. So it was then where I decided to really pursue my CPA license. And in the capacity that I did that, it was also while I was still working and sort of being a mom. So if we say I started around 2006 2007, I want to say, to really pursue it. I was uh, I continued to land different roles within the accounting world, and I will say, pretty successful at doing that. But the thing that all I always felt that I didn't have, or that I wish I had, maybe that's a better way to say it, is that somebody that I could talk to that would say, hey, maybe, that had the experience that could kind of give me that wisdom. And so I didn't. So it was just me. So I had, many friends that I say we were our own mentors at the time, because we at least we were surrounded by a bunch of very ambitious people. And so I would just have to, I would bounce things off of them, and then I would just have to tell myself that I had to make it work. So I would take my kids to Chuck E. Cheese, give them little tokens, and then I would study. And so for me, it took a while. As you can see, my defining moments were that I would say, kind of a baby in the CPA world. I'm like celebrating 10 years right this year, when I was sworn in on my license here in the state of Texas. And then in 2021, earlier, no, I'm sorry, that should say 2020. I resigned from my corporate job and started my own firm last year. And so I have, I would say it took me, I took the scenic route here, but I really do love what I do. I am a huge advocate and passionate about, getting more people involved in the CPA profession. I communicate, I like to be a walking billboard for who we are and what we do. And I've just kind of, I don't know how long I've been going, but I just kind of have put this last little chart together here, which basically kind of goes through some things for me when I think about the things that are important to me, in the profession, and some of the things that I think that we could, continue to do, or even, implement things if you in your organization, or in that you see that we could, just continue to grow as a profession. And so for me, and feel free to chime in. But for me, I think that our branding and our marketing of who we are and what we do and the value that we bring to the table, we need to be better at communicating that. We understand, right? Everything that nobody sees a lot of times, but um, I don't think that the value that we bring is often understood or seen until crisis or until something bad happens, right? And so for us, I think the way that we engage or we continue to try to bring young people and even older people, honestly, into the profession and to really try to reach that pinnacle, which I've considered the top tier pinnacle level, is really just we can try to engage students at an earlier stage, right? So when we talk about STEM, for me, I never hear, and maybe this is my paradigm, but I don't often hear accounting in that conversation. But what we do analytically, what we do from mathematics, we should be reaching out, right? We should connect those dots, and try to reach out to more people in that STEM world. And then I think from a technological standpoint, I think I mean, we're often scared, right? We see things in black and white sometimes. I don't, but most people say I do. Um, but I think embracing technology is definitely critical, but I often feel like now when we're talking about fintech and as things are moving faster, we have to make sure that yes, we can automate things, but we have to be able to clearly communicate the value that we bring that can't be automated, right? The things that, a lot of people on this call do every day that are maybe less spoken, we're not just metrics, but what do those metrics mean, right? Because you can make a metric sort of communicate anything that you want. So I think that's one thing that I think that would be great for us to continue to do. And then I think for me, if you get back to kind of just my path within the profession too, is and I think young people often get here stuck at here as well, is we could do a better job, or we should do a better job of exposing people to all the things that we have to offer, right? We're not necessarily just we're not just in one wow, I don't know what I'm trying to say. We don't just do one things, but what often happens is when you're looking for a mentor, they often say, well, what do you want to do? Right? That's often the first question. And if you haven't had exposure, if you don't have any view of what's out there, it's hard to communicate, well, this is what I want to do. If I've been stuck doing general ledger entries and that's all I really know, right? Rinse, repeat, it's hard to say, oh, well, what are the other options, right? So what does tax have to offer? So what does internal audit have to offer? So I think, we tend to get siloed or heads down into what we know and what we're comfortable with. But I think exposure is something that I think will continue to add value. And then again, this is a topic that is probably not unfamiliar to most, but I think continued focus on increasing diversity. And for me, that's really at the faculty level. That's really even in the CPA. I mean, I'll be honest, when I'm on CPAs, a lot of times there's not a lot of presenters that come, look like me, or so it even as a young person, when I go promote the profession, if I want to say, they're like, okay, well, I don't see anybody that even remotely kind of resembles me, or is. So I think that's another area that we can do. And then just local and national organizations. I mean, I'm really happy with what this society does. I think that the group is very engaging, genuinely, right, and wants to know. So there and that's important. I think Mary is very good at pushing, but also embracing, the fact that this conversation is really important. And then the last little point that I have here is just as we are all leaders, or even in discussions, or even in chats, when we're talking about the mentorship program, it's being mindful of the design and execution, right? So for me, one of the things is, okay, go find a mentor. Well, I mean, it really wasn't like, it wasn't easy for me to find a mentor because, well, for a variety of reasons. Again, lack of exposure. I didn't know how to articulate what I wanted to be. It wasn't until that one day when, when everything sort of came to light. So we all can, work in environments where we see potential, right? So just like we have kids, or you have nieces, we have nephews, you see that potential, and it's our responsibility to try to harness it, right? And we can do, the best we can to kind of identify the talent, and then ask the questions. Oh, so what do you do? What do you like about what you do? What do what else are you, have you heard about, right? And so I try to do that with my staff, even when I'm working with someone that's just really in my AP or AR department. I want them to understand how what they do is critical to the whole process, right? If we're not billing, what happens to our revenue? Because if people understand that and they can see it, sometimes it helps them, see the bigger picture, and then say, okay, now that's something I want to do on the back end. And so also, and then also, I feel like, we could also do a better job, or continue to try to connect like larger and smaller firms, right? A lot, and I think this doesn't is not limited to diversity, but just in general, when you decide to go out on your own, or when you make that switch, there's always a list of, how do I do it, right? So having the resources to say, someone to reach out to say, oh yes, I know this person started, and just to have that ear and that communication. So I think those would be very helpful. Okay. And then, so this is me. This is my firm that I started. It said 2021, but actually it's 2020. And then, so it's my little small accounting advisory firm. And so, that's really it. Any questions? Please say no.
Thank you so much, Felicia. We really appreciate getting to hear about your journey. So I have a question to start with, but
Okay.
before I ask it, I wanted to let everyone know that this whole idea of accounting as a STEM profession is something that we, along with all the other state CPA societies and the AI CPA, are pushing at the
Oh,
federal level
I didn't even know
with
that.
Congress. There actually is a bill in the House to recognize accounting as a STEM profession. It's HR 3855. I'll put that in the chat as well. But the whole idea is about saying, accounting is about technology. Accounting, as Felicia, you said, is about math. There are lots of aspects to how accounting functions in today's world that justify being recognized as a STEM profession. And if we can get that accomplished, then it also unlocks all kinds of support, federal grant money, encouragement for more diverse people in the profession, and recruiting into the accounting profession through the pipeline, if you will. So just FYI about that. If anyone is interested in knowing more detail, you can chat to me or you can email me, and I'll put my email address in the chat as well. I'm happy to send you the background piece on it.
That'd
But
be
I'm
great.
right there with you, Felicia. That whole STEM component really does help people understand why accounting is so important in the capital market environment, right? So
Agreed.
here's my question. You mentioned early on that when you were in high school, the folks at school, I presume counselors and such, were suggesting that you take the vocational route instead of the 4-year college degree route.
Yeah.
And your mother, who
Yeah.
was obviously well educated as a nurse, was the person who steered you in a different direction. What kinds of messages did you get in high school that made you say, yeah, they don't have the same confidence in me that my own mother has?
Well, okay. So to be fair to them, it I wasn't really trying to super duper excel. So part of it could be me. I mean, I could have been in honors classes, but I wasn't. I was just, I was like, college prep means I am prepping for college. I need to do, some more work. And then also it's a small town. So I'm coming from a small town in New Jersey. So a lot of people don't leave the town. So conceptually, there wasn't a lot of people. If people were going to, there wasn't that many people going to college. Well, sorry if there's any deferred, but it back in we're talking the early 90s. Now, if you were, let's say in that honor society, right, they really, they did try to push you or help you get to college, but there just wasn't a whole lot of emphasis on that for me. And to be just another component that I didn't probably talk about in a lot of detail, but I really didn't live at home with my mom when I was younger for a variety of reasons. But one of the things that I was able to appreciate once I left, and I mean, I lived with my family, but I had to be at a very young age motivated and disciplined. I did not have a lot of people. I didn't have anybody really saying, okay, get up and go to school, get good grades. This is what, but I had that because my mom had already established that foundation in us very early. And my mom did it, she got her bachelor's, master's, all as a single mom with 3 kids. So there was that was just something that I saw. She communicated it, probably not in the very best way all the time. However, once I had to kind of go out and to sort of, grow up and be in that environment, um, yeah, I lived in a house with a lot of people and only like 3 of us went to school, so so it was a little bit of a lot of things kind of going on there. But I don't think I fit whatever that criteria was back in those days, which was probably National Honor Society, super studious, all of those things. And so but once I mean, I knew I had to graduate, and then I knew I was going to college. It was just a matter of where and when. So sorry, that was long-winded. So
That's okay. Thank you. You also mentioned that there weren't a lot of people who look like you along the way. What was that like?
that's a very interesting question, Mary, because to be honest, there technically, when we talk about the accounting world, right, there are there are a lot of, it's diverse, right? There are a lot of accountants that are like this, there's AP, there's, the clerkships, there's the general ledger. You tend to see, I tend to see people like me in similar positions. Now at, at that higher level, right? And then again with the distinction, that was very rare. So it really, from that perspective, when I often ended up with mentors in IT, to be honest. And I'm not an IT person. I tried it and I just really decided that debits and credits are my jam. But I ended up with people that, I mean, I did meet people that help me I'm trying to get the right word, sorry guys, to persevere, to keep going, right? But I didn't have anyone that could really help me within the accounting profession, or that did help me. So there might have been people that could have, but it really was a lot of times, I think, and I have to catch myself on this too, is that we get head down and focused on trying to achieve goals that we don't often take time to say, who can I help, who can I bring along with me, right? And so what I've always tried to do, as when got into the position of management and that I could direct people, um, and that's all people, I really do try to take the extra time to really say, just to get to know people and say, well, what is it that you like? Because if we start with what you like, we can help you get to what you are. Oh, I hate my job. Well, why do you hate it? Well, I'm doing the same thing every day. Well, let's talk about what you do and how what you do on the front end impacts the downstream. Because if you can, people, if they understand that, then they can say, okay, so there is something outside of X, Y, and Z that I could probably, achieve. And so anybody that knows me now is like, as soon as I meet a student, I say, "You want to be a CPA?" My kids, they did not follow me, but that's okay. I tried. I did try, but I do. I am the biggest advocate because I just love it. I love it.
I love how you said you're a billboard for being a CPA. I think that's fabulous. As a reminder, everyone, you can unmute yourself and ask a question. You can also post your question in the chat and I will share it with Felicia. So thank you, Caitlin, for posting a question. And here it is, Felicia. Did you ever feel that you had to hide parts of yourself to fit in the accounting world? You're muted,
Okay,
Felicia.
sorry. Yes, no. I didn't because I can't. Like I've always kind of been transparently who I am. I've actually would probably have done things that most people wouldn't have done at certain parts of my career because I knew it would make me have to work harder. So I am a little bit different in that sort of way. It's probably one of the reasons why maybe it took me longer to get to what I consider success. I mean, I've always, I think, and people around me will say, had the ability to be able to see the landscape, right? I can kind of um, look around and understand how things work together. And I think one of the reasons why I left my last job, which was, I mean, I worked for this company for 13 years. They really gave me the ability to run various types of businesses. But the frustration that I had in my last job is I was, our job is advisory, right? I often say we're like Tyrion from the Game of Thrones, right? We'll give you the information you need. What you decide to do with it is different, right? And so you run into this conflict sometimes between what the data and information we provide and what operationally the business wants to do, right? And so when it got to the point where, I was able to take a business from triage, out of triage to stability, and then not able to keep us, not able to allow us to grow because we fell into the same habits. And it's like, it's not that I didn't tell you, it's in, it's in this report from this day, but the decision was made to continue to do the same thing. And so for me, it was, yeah, I wasn't necessarily heard, but I don't think it was because, it's just, I think that's what we run into as a profession sometimes. So sorry, Kate, a long way to say, no, I've always been me. I don't know how else to be.
Good for you. Thank you. Stephanie writes, thank you for sharing your story. I can relate in many, many ways to it. I really appreciate your vulnerability.
Oh,
Who
thanks.
would you say is or has been your biggest supporter in the accounting field and in pursuing your CPA?
So, again, I will have to say her name is Paula Redmond. She was a VP at Western Union at the time. And so they were like when we went through our restatement, she was deployed to Houston with a ton of people. And she was really the first person to say, okay, this is where we live in debits and credits. So let's put the T accounts on the board. Let's see, let's see how the process is supposed to happen. What happens with when these transactions come in? What's the debit? What's the credit? How did things get caught up? And when you're an accountant sometimes and you're doing the work and you're saying, yeah, we have a problem, right? I mean, a lot of us have experienced that when we're just like, yeah, this is kind of not, this doesn't appear to be right, or this is not the entry that I left with last night. There's a lot of things that happen, right? We see the gamut. But she was the first person when we were going through that really said, Felicia, you got it. Right. And at some point, if you don't pursue this CPA, you're going to get stuck. You're going to want to go for a VP job. You're going to want to go for this job, and it's going to be a requirement. So I was like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. And I felt validated in that I was a good accountant. I had never like, and again, early 2000s, if people were remember that, that was wheeling and dealing, very accountants trying to be salespeople. I don't know how else to say it, right? But there was really, if you weren't working at the top firms, if you weren't doing this, there was always like there were two tiers, which I think continues to happen today. But it was that point where somebody said, yeah, you really do get it. So I think it would be good for you to, pursue this. And I had to say, well, what is this? And then I had to say, well, I have two kids. They're like three, 5 and 6. How am I going to do it? And my kids will tell you that I've been at a I had books or work all the time. When they were young, they were in my office with the playpen. This is probably why they didn't want to be CPAs or accountants, but they always saw me do it. They saw me pursue it, and they were there when I opened that last CPA exam and it said I passed. So, and they were 10 and 11. So we kind of have done it together, to be honest. Sorry, I'll be quiet now.
No, no, no.
So I
This
have
is
to
your
mute my.
story. It's wonderful that you're sharing all these. Just out of curiosity, and then Stephanie has a follow-up question. How old are your kids today?
My son, my daughter's 21 and my son is 22.
And do you have a sense of what they have decided to pursue as their career choices?
Oh yeah, not accounting. Still working on it. My son just graduated in May with a bachelor's of arts in video game development from St. Edward's University in Austin, and my daughter is at George Mason University, which is a rival to my school, studying forensic science. So yeah,
Both
nah.
of which have some similarities with the profession. I think
Yeah,
that's terrific.
I know. I'm trying to get my daughter to pursue a forensic certificate. So she works for me sometimes, and so she gets it now. It wasn't until, to be honest, I meant to put something in there about the pandemic, but it wasn't until the pandemic, and then and I guess me being my own, I don't want to say my own boss, but me working for myself and her just really helping out with it, that she was able to see, oh, this is what you do. This is not so bad, and so yeah, I'm trying to get her to at least get the forensic accounting. I was like, I can use you. I can bill you out. She's just like, really? She's like,
Good luck with that. Stephanie's follow-up
yep.
question. Have you ever felt like an imposter, like you didn't belong in the profession?
Mm, no, I mean, okay, but no, I can't. I know that I've always been sort of authentically me. People who know me, I have just a different view on the world. And so I was frustrated, right? So I experienced a lot of frustration in that, like, how do I get to the next level? Like, how do I make, how do I make people hear me, right? But I had to really focus on the things that I could focus on, right? Which is try to be the best you. Try to learn as much as you can, and everything else will come um as it's supposed to. And I think, I was able to do that. And I think part of the pandemic, what it showed me or what it gave me was two things. It gave me a lot more confidence. And then also my last position, which probably almost killed me, also did that as well. It really showed me to me that I'm kind of good at what I do. And so I never felt like an imposter, but I definitely can say I had a lot of frustrations.
Tanya writes, Felicia, thank you for sharing your story and being a billboard for the profession. I'm curious when and how you are connecting with students.
So I as often as I can, I am every time I see a student, so what are you studying? What do you want to be when you grow up? What about an accountant? Have you thought about this? You can ask all my friends. I even tell their daughters and grandkids. So one of the things that I really do want to do is I really want to engage more with the kids. I haven't really found the right balance or the right vehicle to know how to do that effectively now. I'll be completely honest. So most of my engagement is socially, wherever I see a child and we talk about where you want to be when you grow up. I always try to interject, oh, well, do you know what accountants do? And everybody knows tax. And I'm like, yes, but we do much more. So I can, just expand their horizons. And, and I asked them, do you like money? Do you like knowing how, to grow money or how money works through a business? If you want to own your own business, do you know that this is the foundation of doing that? And then this is your communicative tool that tells people how well you're doing. And so that's that's kind of where I am right now, Tanya. But it is on my to-do list. It's on my 3 year plan.
And I'm certain that with Tanya's help and a few other people in this group today, we can make sure that you have plenty of additional opportunities, Felicia.
Oh,
Thank you for your passion. I
oh,
love it that you just are
sorry.
talking with kids of every age. So Heidi writes, what advice do you have for those of us working in industry or government to encourage our talented staff and team members to pursue credentials that will allow them to move up in the accounting
Mm.
profession?
Yeah, I really think it starts with, just having conversations, right? And really just communicating to them how valuable they are, right? The more you learn in different arenas, right? The more opportunities you have, the more abilities you have to pivot, right? So and I think it's really encouraging them, right? It's what can I do to help you? um you know yeah, I think that.
So what we know from the research that's been done at the AICPA is that the two most impactful people, if you will, that encourage kids successfully to move up, or people who are in the accounting role but haven't pursued the credential, family members or good friends,
Mm-hmm.
and employers.
Mm.
That's what the research says. It's
Yeah.
literally say it's important and
Yeah.
help people understand,
And
right?
I do it with my friends that are old. People that know me know it doesn't. When I started with a group of, maybe there were 5 or 6 of us that were like, okay, we're going to do this. I mean, we were all African American. We all were like 100% focused. Now, 2 of us, were able to cross the finish line. But I have a friend right now, she was with me at the starting line. She's 50 and that's still her goal. So, and that's the other thing, right? It's like, it is pursuing it at any age, because it's almost like, lawyers don't say, go to school and then don't try to pass the bar and be a JD, right? So it's really, it's the same thing. And I tell people all the time, because I think the thing too is that we are a very persistent, diligent, but pretty quiet profession, right? So we're not super braggadocious. So people, don't really know. A lot of times they don't even. So what is a CPA? When I tell them, it's equivalent to like a lawyer getting the JD and passing the bar. It clicks. So I again, and that's where I think that our branding, our telling people who we are and what we do, and that it's not, it's not any more boring than any other anybody else's daily. So.
So one of the things we hear a lot about these days, Felicia, is that pretty much if you want to be successful as a Black CPA or
Mhm.
Black accountant in the profession, it really helps if you go to a historically Black college or
Oh,
university.
Lord.
What do you think about that?
Well, I have no thoughts because I didn't go to a prestigious. What I mean, I think, to be honest, I think the thought there is that you have camaraderie, right? You have people like-minded, like, in the same boat, driving towards the same thing. And I think it I could see where the benefit is in that like just like for all like young accounting students, right? You all kind of end up at you end up at Deloitte, or you end up at PwC, and you're in like a cohort, right? So if you have a cohort of people that kind of feel the same way, that are moving in the same direction, then it makes it feels more comfortable to have someone that you can go to and say, okay, well, man, I don't think I'm not progressing. Oh, well, here's what I did. Or, yeah, let's study for the exam together, you know? And so I don't think it's really any different, but any different than having regular, any other accounting students kind of sort of study together, kind of, started their careers together. But I think because we're so few, right? If you look at it, we're so few. There's 2%. How many people in your accounting department? When I say accounting department, I'm including the transactional folks, right? AP, AR, general ledger, all of those people that are of color. It's not a small number. It's a pretty big number, right? Of people. It's just, I think sometimes it's just exposure, and then it's the knowledge of what else you can do within the profession. So yeah, I can see that, but I can't really speak to that because yeah, it's just not how I
Yeah, it wasn't
operate.
your path.
That
So
wasn't.
Judy asks, what do you think is the biggest obstacle for people of color becoming CPAs and finding positions?
Um, I think the biggest challenge is being discouraged. And I think this again applies to everybody. I think it applies to all of us. It's just that our numbers are smaller. I think it's uh, the number that actually pursue the CPA for whatever reason, right? And then the number that, okay, when if I'm going to pursue it, if it takes me longer, or if I don't pass, if anybody's failed a CPA a section, and you have to restudy to take it, I mean, it happens. It does. It's not limited to people of color, but it's discouraging, right? And so you get to a point where you say, okay, well, I can do something else, or I can do this. So, and it maybe they don't, maybe there's nobody around them to say keep going, right? So I think I think that's a challenge. And then I think in terms of getting positions, eh, we don't control that, right? So I don't have that much control of someone being willing to hire me. So I think that a group like this, people that are saying, hey, I know a candidate, I know somebody that might fit, and really just being the advocate for people who have less voice, that will really help. When if I mean, it wasn't until I got another boss who was really, he put me in really the right positions to for people to say, okay, yeah, let Felicia can do that, Felicia can do that. So that's what we need to do. We just need to find people and help them.
Judy had a follow-up, and I think you just answered it. The follow-up was, what's one thing we can do to encourage people to pursue? And it sounds like it's all about being direct, right?
Yeah, and engaging, right? I mean, some people have never thought about it, so they may have they may have an accounting degree, they may be working in a certain area, but they've never thought about pursuing it. So it's to say, if you do it, I'll be here to support you. Is it going to be easy? No. Is it good? But we can definitely.
So Michaela, go ahead and unmute yourself. Michaela has a question for you, Felicia.
Hi.
Okay.
Yeah, hi Felicia. So I
Hi.
kind of wanted to allude back to the point you made about mentorship. I think that's just, it's very important, and especially at a young age, and it sounds like you're trying to get more involved with the community, to kind of just even have that initial conversation to, you know, just bring the idea of like accounting about. So guess I just lost my train of thought. So my question is because I was actually having this conversation with a coworker today, throughout the school systems, it seems like accounting as a profession and as a degree is kind of shrinking. Like there's not a lot of people who are wanting to kind of pursue that career path. So for you as a business owner, has it been hard to find people to kind of um, fill those positions, or what have you seen?
As a small business owner, Michaela, I am the position. So there's like three clones of me. So no, but I think your question is really good and it's interesting because I don't know if she joined, but one of my I got a call from my cousin the other day and she said, "Oh, I want to learn accounting." Okay, so I said, "Sure, let's have a conversation about it." She got her degree in something completely different, but she's interested in she's worked in banking, she's interested in starting a business, and she wants to learn the fundamentals. So okay, my best friend's on the line, and so she worked for me, so she can attest to this. But when it comes to work, I'm a very I'm a work I work hard. And the people that work with me and for me, we enjoy ourselves, but we work we work. And so I called her. I said, okay, well, I know your mom probably told you this, but let's talk about this. So are we serious? Is this a pastime? Because I take accounting very seriously. And the when I work with somebody, I want them to be as passionate, about it as, and I've taken people who literally hated what they do to now they're like, man, I'm so glad you spent the time with me and to help me understand it because I have a completely different position because of it. And so for me, she's interested, and so I'm interested to teach her. Absolutely. If you wanna do it and you're serious, like I might not be your favorite boss, but you'll learn a lot from me. You know what I mean? And so I I do it with my friends' grandkids. Do you want to come over and enter data into a spreadsheet? You like money? Okay, this is what it means, and then pay attention to detail. My spreadsheet needs to be accurate. So I mean, just little things like that is just making it a part of their ethos.
Yeah, and I appreciate that because like for me, when I grew up, like I nobody like in my family like pursued accounting. So for me, it's like when you get out of high school, it's like, well, what do you want to do? And I'm like,
Absolutely.
to be quite frank, until I came across my mentor, it's like I never even heard of a CPA. So
Yeah,
I,
absolutely. And I think that's I think that to me, when I talk about branding of the profession, right? When you go out now, you're young, right? The landscape for a young I mean, I'm not saying that old people can't get into it as well, but you have so much going on, right? You have crypto, you have, the whole DeFi. There's so many areas to become an expert in, right? My daughter's like, Mom, you're doing a lot. I'm like, oh, I need to learn blockchain. I need to do this. You have cannabis. Like there's so much that, if even for me, because I like to learn and I'm curious about it, but there's so much space, that we need to kind of come like that. If it was me and I was young, there are certain areas that I would just like be looking to tap into.
Mhm. And I'm just one more follow-up question.
No worries.
But if I remember your PowerPoint correctly, it said that you got your BBA and sports management, and
Yeah.
then you got your MBA.
Yeah.
So uh, just as far as like the education requirements go to obtain your CPA, like did you have to take any additional
Yeah.
accounting courses?
So, and I think that's a good point. And I didn't want to make this PowerPoint too wordy, but that is an area that I think a mentorship and guidance would have helped me, right? Because when I pursued my MBA, it was there was a couple of reasons. At that time, I felt stuck in accounting. I was in general ledger, so it was rinse, wash, and repeat, right? It's the same thing every month. My brain doesn't like that. I've come to learn that I like a mess. So if it's challenge, if it's clean and tidy, it's not my jam. If it's a little bit of a mess, like I like that because it challenges your brain, right? It's more than just the debits and credits of accounting. And that's the part that I think that it's really important for us to, communicate out, right? And so I did not have the guidance and the foresight. I wanted to be out of accounting. I was just going to go into finance. This is pre my restatement. So I was like, this is just boring. I need something a little more challenging. Had I had some guidance and mentorship, then I would have pursued a master's in accountancy, right? Because number one, it would two things it would have done. A, it would have fulfilled my CPA requirements, which I had to go back and take more classes with my two kids, blah, 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 in order to meet the requirements to take the exam. But then two, I would be in a better position to become a professor, right? So when we start talking about, again, I think part of where we lose, we don't engage, I don't want to say lose, but part of where we don't engage or we lose the attention of students is because we don't really we don't do well, I don't know, because I'm not in school anymore, but I think when I was in school, it didn't really mirror all the way what was happening in business, right? And so how those two things go together and how accounting can be non-repetitive, right? A lot of people think we do the same thing all of the time. And so yeah, if I had a little more guidance, especially and part of it was I was a mom, but I had moved to Texas, so I was used to being in the city. I moved to the South. It's like my first time in this area, and I was like, I need to go back to school. I need to be around some adults, right? And so that's when I went to get my MBA. It was really almost just to get out the house for a couple hours. So if I had thought about it, and that's why I tell everybody, I really do. I tell people if you want to pursue the CPA after you have not been in a profession, what's going to be more beneficial is getting your hours so that you could take the exam than to get an MBA. Or if you're going to get it, get an MBA with a focus in this, or do a master's of X, Y, and Z. So I do tell people that all the time.
One of the things we have heard for years, Felicia, is that especially for people of color, that it's easy to understand what an attorney does. It's easy to understand what a fireman does, or a cop does, or a doctor does. But it's not necessarily a profession, when you're talking about the CPA profession, that people of color necessarily even run across. What do you think about that?
I don't, I would say, I think communicated that way, maybe, right? But within, we all understand, right? Like that money's important, and especially if you don't have it, right? So I think it's about taking that translation of here's what you do like, because all kids like money, all kids like to have it, all kids like to spend it. Most kids at least have a lemonade stand or something like that, right? In at some point. So when we talking about accounting being the language of business, right? That term accounting is never in the conversation. So if you're saying, we want to have a business, you want to run your own business, you want to be successful. Well, do you know what helps businesses thrive and be successful? Is this profession called accounting, right? And you can automate away the initial inflows and outflows. You can't automate away the analytics and the intelligence that goes into it, right? So I think it's just more about conversation. Because I'll be honest, I didn't know when I was younger, I did want to be an attorney, Jacoby and Myers, because guess what? Jacoby and Myers commercial came on every day when we were coming home from school. So I knew what that was. I didn't know what an attorney did, but I knew there was a firm called Jacoby and Myers, and they did corporate, X, Y, and Z, because that came on, I heard advertisement for that. And so I think it's really that your accountant, most people don't have an accountant. You know what I mean? Like most people don't interact with the CPA or don't know that they interact with the CPA. They may know somebody's dad does something, but they don't know exactly what that is. I think like from an immigrant perspective, a lot of times they may have businesses or people that have their own business or have been around their people with their own businesses. They understand the importance of that function accounting. So again, it's exposure and communicating, out who we are and what we do.
So Rebecca says, Felicia, last I knew you were still in Texas. Have you relocated to Colorado yet? And what prompted your relocation?
I said, sadly, no, but I'll be there next week. I am still back and forth. I'm still here in Texas, but I do go back and forth. And really, what prompted me to leave Colorado was the pandemic, because I quit my job on Valentine's Day 2020, and then my mom was older, and I stayed until maybe May or June, where my kids were like they spent their whole semester in Colorado with me. But then from a practical perspective, it just made more sense for me to come back here while she was going through that. And so now my lease is almost up, so I'm working on my plan for 2022.
I'll jump in with a question. Felicia, my name is Brody. I'm with Blue Ocean Ideas. You mentioned your kids a couple times, which is always cool for me when people talk about their kids. And every time you did, you made a comment about how you haven't talked them yet into entering the accounting profession. And I couldn't tell if that was a little bit tongue in cheek, like you're sort of like giving a nod to the fact that we're talking about accounting, or if you are sort of truly disappointed that they've not entered the profession yet. And I'm curious which of those it is, and if it is true that you truly are disappointed that they're not accountants or becoming CPAs at this time, why that is. Like, why is that so important to you that they would do that?
So I wish my daughter was on. She's in class right now, because she would tell you that I'm 100%. I feel this way. And not for any reason. Obviously, they're what they want to do with their lives is based on their passion and the things that they're interested in. I'm disappointed because it could be one more Black CPA around, right? And so I could have checked my little box and trying to say, okay, I did it. They decided to join me. But again, they have their own path, their goals and objectives and their ambitions. And like I said, my son has no interest at all. But my daughter, has recently, she didn't really know how this can kind of go with forensics. So now that she's sort of seeing that, she definitely is lab. My kids are science. She loves to be in the lab. She wants to be a finger latent technologist or something. So yeah, they just have their own passions.
That's what I was hoping to do too.
Yeah.
A finger something technologist.
Me too. Well, no, not me. No. Yeah. But it's funny because, right, they, like I said, when they're young, they were around it, but they didn't understand it. It really wasn't until this summer, and then her being in college and being able to see that these two things go together, that she was like, oh, Mom, you really do help people. Like, this is not as boring as I thought. And I'm like, I know. Whatever.
We have time for one or two more questions. So if anyone would like to either unmute or post in the chat, we'll cover them before we do a little bit of reminder about what's coming next, and wish you a terrific afternoon. One more question from anyone.
Okay, Felicia, this is Rebecca. So for one, is your daughter's name Lucy?
No, her name's Khalees.
Oh, okay. Because somebody named Lucy Clement, it was like the first valid message that I ever got on my website. Everything else is always spam or junk, but somebody named Lucy Clement came on and said, oh, you have the greatest website. I love it. And I was like, this has got to be related to Felicia. But anyway, so there's that. But the other thing is, if your daughter's interested in the forensic or whatever, I always feel like with accounting that I actually, as much as I do D accounts and debits and credits, it's like detective work. You see what people are doing, you see how they spend their money, or you see like a pattern change in what they're doing. And, your mind has to then start trying to figure it out, like what's going on here and why is this happening? And, if we can promote that aspect of it to people, like you say, maybe it'll become a lot more interesting to them.
Yeah, no, absolutely, Rebecca. You really, you really did spark something in it, because that could be a whole game of detective, and how and really how we go about doing, translating the audit process right into a way that's communicative, and interesting for young people. Yeah, and I think she didn't really get it until she had a class and they were talking about it, and she was like, oh, okay, but
Yep,
we'll see. There's time left.
you bet.
Your son might decide a video game for a detective CPA, right?
Yeah, I mean, I doubt it. He's not as cooperative, let's just say that.
There's
Like,
time.
he
You
did my
said
website
there's
though.
time.
So he did help me with my website. So
He's a good guy.
he is. He tries. Well, thanks everyone for hope I didn't bore you, and hope you had a good hour.
Absolutely, Felicia. All kinds of comments in the chat about how much people have appreciated hearing your story and the discussion as well. I'd remind everyone that our next occasion, our next See Me story, is 3 wise women talking about their experience of being female in the accounting profession. So our DE&I working group members, Alyssa Wright and Rebecca Bauer, along with Kelly Kozliski, a partner with Plant Moran, are going to do that on December 1st. And Ken Richards, also a member of our DE&I working group, and his 2 daughters, adopted when they were 6 years old, they are twins from Sierra Leone, are going to be our presenters on December 22nd. We do have dates scheduled into 2022 as well. So keep your eye out for the announcements for those upcoming events. And we encourage you not only to join us again, but also to encourage your colleagues and your friends to participate as well. Thanks so much, everyone, and have a great rest of your day. Take care.
Bye.